Good morning, San Diego. Welcome to Operation American Dream. I'm your host, Eve Nasby. We have a great show planned for you today where we really seek to educate you around employment, veteran entrepreneurship, home ownership, and financial literacy. Our guests today include Captain Williams, one of my most favorite people, a Korean War hero who for 50 years had to keep a secret. We also have Kalani Krutzberg from Camis and Canines coming, a true Cinderella story of a veteran who served in Afghanistan, came back to San Diego, unfortunately was homeless, but now is a successful business owner. You're not going to want to leave. Please stay tuned for the best of Operation American Dream. Welcome back to Operation American Dream. I'm your host, Eve Nasby, and as promised, we have a 50-year secret unveiled right here on Operation American Dream with Captain Williams. Captain Williams, welcome to our show.
Thank you.
You were in World War II,
Yes.
and you were a naval aviator.
Yes.
And you have an incredible story to tell, and we're going to talk a little bit about that story and why you're now being considered for a Medal of Honor. So, an incredible story. So, talk about you joined the Navy, and I think you had some history there too. Your dad was in the military as well?
My dad was in the Army in World War I.
Mm-hmm.
My brother and I were in, I'll say, the Navy. I originally went in the Minnesota Guard when I was 16. And they allowed me to finish high school before I was put in full-time military. In the meanwhile, I turned 17 and joined the V5 program, which is a program toward becoming a naval aviator.
Mm-hmm.
So that was from 1942, early.
And what did you fly?
Training aircraft mainly. I started in old open cockpit biplane made by the Navy Department. It's called the N3N. And then I went to an upgrade open cockpit biplane called the N2S, Stearman. And then an SNV, Vultee Vibrator we called it. It was a single wing fixed landing gear. Then we upgraded to the SNJ, which was similar but more powerful and retractable landing gear, and a lot of military of other countries use that as a first-class fighter airplane. It was a very nice, and all services during the war used that airplane as an advanced trainer. Then I flew the SBD, which was very active in the war, and especially in Battle Midway. It was the hero of the Midway battle. And then I got into the fighter business of Hellcats and Corsairs.
Wow, what a great transition you have made. And while you were in, you flew all those different aircraft. And I think you mentioned before as we were chatting that like the F-4 Phantom, you had grandparents and then kids that had all flown that aircraft. They all pretty much stayed in the same vertical, but you flew all kinds of aircraft. So you must have been a very good pilot.
Well, no, during the time they were discovering new techniques and developing aviations. And after one deployment, there would be a newer one, and I would get in that. So every time I deployed in my 30-some years, I was flying a new airplane that had not really a history before.
And you were okay with that, which is remarkable.
I loved it.
You loved it. So you would have made a great astronaut, just going up in those tests.
I didn't volunteer for that, but I know some of them.
So tell me, this incident that happened that is setting you up to receive the Medal of Honor, tell us what happened. Tell us about that day and your interactions with your commanding officer and what happened that day.
In our day-to-day combat in Korea, the Navy part of it, was located at sea, of course, out from the 38th parallel, the division between North and South Korea. And our mission was mainly anti-logistics to help the soldier on the ground, to destroy tunnels and trains and tanks and trucks and sampans, and to give close air support to the guy on the ground who hit the enemy who was almost in sight, just right in front of him.
Right.
But we were unable to hit some of the major targets that way, which was a little out of our range, which was way to the north. So the planners decided to send a task force, 3 carriers, USS Midway with the task force commander, Admiral Clark, on board, and then a bunch of destroyers, about 25 ships,
Wow.
to get a little closer to the target. So we went up off a major city in North Korea called Chongjin, and that put us well within the range to hit those targets. Well, the first day we arrived, and before dawn we took off, and at dawn hit Hworyong, a manufacturing city right on the Yalu River, which is the dividing point between Russia, at that time Soviet Union, and North Korea. And there were a lot of targets there of manufacturing sites and warehouses. Well, this upset the Soviets, and they started to show signs of concern with launching all kinds of airplanes and a lot of communication chatter. So Admiral Clark and the deciders decided that we ought to back off and evaluate what's going on, and then perhaps send another mission in at dusk and then go back to where we came from on the 38th parallel. And in the meantime, as always, when we were at sea and any threat, we sent out combat air patrol. These would be fighter aircraft, which is what I was flying, the F-9, F-5 Panther. So when I got back, I was detailed to get a quick lunch and launch again on an ugly snowstormy day with the clouds down to 400 feet and heavy clouds and snow.
Wow.
We rendezvoused visually under the clouds and climbed through to the top of the clouds, which happened to be 12,000 feet. Well, while we were in climbing, our controller, the Combat Information Center on the Ruskany, the carrier I was on, informed us that there were inbound bogies, meaning unidentified aircraft. And they were to the north of us, so we kept that in mind as we climbed. And when we got to the top, the leader of the flight, Lieutenant Elwood, declared that he had a problem with his engine and was getting a warning light, and they directed him and his wingman to go back and remain over the task force. And I took the lead with a guy that I'd never flown with before or since. But I at that time, and right as this lead was leaving us, there were contrails I spotted that had been called bogies, and there were 7 of them, and as they passed over me, they were easily identified as MiG-15s.
Wow, 7 MiGs flying
7
over
MiGs,
you.
yes.
And what did you do?
Well, they said that's your target. And
Obviously.
I test fired my guns and made sure I was combat ready. The airplane was performing perfectly, and pursued them. And as they passed over, they turned to the north, and I kept climbing in their direction. They outdistanced me, but I got to 26,000 feet when they were probably starting at 50,000 feet or higher.
Wow.
Dove, splitting in a group of 3 and 4 in opposite directions to bracket me.
Wow.
And when I lost sight, so did the radar control guy. So we were in the blind, and they directed me to come back and establish a barricade between last sighting and the task force. Well, in that turn, I'm being shot at by 4 MiGs in formation.
Oh my goodness.
And I responded by kicking the airplane around and firing on the last guy and shooting him down.
Wow. Wow. Well, that was just one.
That's just one.
Out of
that's
the
start.
7, you shot down 4, and you're the only American in the United States history to ever do that.
From Korean War on. During World War II, there were some that did that.
And it is for this act of bravery you saved the fleet. Is that an accurate statement?
We don't know their intentions, but because of this information that we've just received, we have the communication that took place from the controllers and these MiGs, and they were directed to increase speed and attack.
Got it. And now so there is a petition going on, and underneath the bottom of our screen, we're going to put the website where you can go on and you can sign the petition. We need 100,000 signatures. Is that right, Ralph?
That's correct.
100,000 signatures to petition to get the Medal of Honor for you. But I think with the release of the NSA documents, it's pretty much we're heading down that path. So we have an American hero right here with us on Operation American Dream, and I thank you for being a part of the show. You're an amazing person, and they're actually doing a movie about you. Is that right? So I heard it was Forgotten Hero of a Forgotten War. And I think we're all going to line up to get tickets to that because I think your story is compelling, and there's so much more to it. But again, we've got pictures of what your plane looked like in the wing with all the bullet holes in it, and you standing there just smiling as if just another day, you know. But you're a humble hero, and again, I want to thank you, Captain Williams, for being a part of our show, and thank you for being here as well, and supporting all that he's doing. And
I was wingman.
You're the wingman right now, so thank you again. Well, thank you for joining us on Operation American Dream. We'll be right back after these messages. Don't go away. Welcome back to Operation American Dream. I'm your host, Eve Nasby, and last week we had Captain Williams with us. He was in a dogfight with 7 MiGs, and he shot down 4, the only American in history to ever do that. And we've got him back in studio. Captain Williams, welcome back.
Thank you.
So we last left off. You had shot down that 1 MiG. Tell us what happened after that, and then we're going to talk to Rolf over here because he's got some more stories to tell about you. So you've shot down 1. You've got 6 others that are surrounding you. Then what happened?
Well, they were taking turns shooting at me, and I was doing my best to evade, to spoil their aim and survive.
In an inferior aircraft, I might add, you weren't flying another equal to the MiG. You were flying almost like a prop job, right? Trying to evade all of this and then shooting them down.
Yes, I had no intention to leave, but I didn't have a lot of opportunity because they would dive and then pull up so abruptly that I couldn't pull up and track them and shoot. But right after I shot down the first one, the remaining 3 of that formation pulled on up and turned back and came on a head-on run at me.
Oh my gosh.
And I fired at the first guy who was the lead. When he came in range, he was shooting at me further out because he had larger guns and so forth, and maybe he was in range. Once I just fired briefly, he pulled off, but his wingman continued, and I hit him way out, and he never maneuvered. It just went on down. And now we're down to 5, and they're continuing their runs, and I'm evading, and without much of an opportunity to shoot. But one guy made a mistake and just turned without climbing, and I was able to get behind him, and he just came unglued, and I had to avoid pieces coming off the airplane.
Oh my
so
goodness.
he was down. Then I had another one that I don't remember exactly just how I hit him, but I remember tracking him, and he was burning. Well, it's not like in World War II with gasoline. This is this is JP fuel for jets, and kerosene. It doesn't burn good, especially at high altitude. And I was firing at him, and he was somewhat out of range, extreme range. So I looked and I saw this guy right in front of me. Well, I ran out of ammunition, and I had nothing better to do than to get out of there. But this guy had a lucky shot, and with a big 37 millimeter, hit my aircraft and exploded right in the accessory section of the engine. And it destroyed most of my controls and all hydraulics, and my airplane was now out of rig and hard to control. So I still had the elevator, which makes you go up and down. So I pushed the airplane as hard as I could forward and back, and this guy was sitting perfect range right behind me and just shooting away, and I'm seeing the big ammunition go over the top, and the smaller I could see the tracers.
Oh my goodness.
I'm aiming toward that snowstorm. Luckily, I got there before he destroyed me, and he lost sight of me, and I lost sight of him, and that was
And
good.
you limped and landed back on the aircraft carrier?
That was a miracle in itself, because I got down to 170 knots, that's about 200 miles an hour, and the airplane would become uncontrollable. That's twice the speed we normally approach the airplane, of the
Holy
carrier.
cow.
And the carrier is in this big storm of 40-knot winds, and it's pitching on around. And I get clearance to land, and I was behind the ship, and they cleared me to land at any speed, because in addition to the 40 knots, a ship can do 30. So they were ready for me, but I couldn't line up. You know, this was back before angle deck. It was just straight deck, and I was trying to line up, but because of my difficulties, I couldn't. But I was pointed at the ship and got in and told them I couldn't control it. And they said, we'll cut you for an early wire, which probably meant I would just go over the side. But the captain of the ship, and I've never heard it before or since, and it made this thing unusual, turned the ship and lined it up with me.
That's fantastic.
Oh my
and
goodness.
I caught a normal wire, and
Wow.
That's
with
a captain.
263 holes in the airplane, I was safely.
263 holes.
Yeah, well, perforation, some of them
Wow.
from the exploding ammunition.
And now you've got a story about Eisenhower and how he was able
I
to
think
meet
the
him.
interesting thing, when after all this occurred, and it was classified, and he came down and they recovered on the carrier, and then he was told it's classified for 50. When they didn't say 50 years, but
Right.
they just said highly
You just
classified.
can't tell anybody.
His squadron mates, half his squadron mates didn't even know, or didn't know what he had accomplished. And then later, and Royce tells the story, later he met with, it was President-elect Eisenhower and all the powers that be, and that's very unusual. If you're a lieutenant in the Navy, you don't go hang out with presidents. And then they're sitting down, and Royce can tell that story, and I think it's fantastic that there was a lot that went on there that nobody knew about, because this, we think, really, truly, and Royce is convinced that it's the first NSA operation.
Wow, the first one. And so what did President-elect Eisenhower say to you when he was sitting next to you?
Well, I was invited to join Admiral Clark to meet with the president in Seoul, Korea. So I was flown to the Marine base at Busan, waiting Admiral Clark's arrival, and we flew on up. He said, I think there's going to be a presentation. We'll send a car for you if this materializes. So they did, and there's a whole lot that happened in between, but they didn't know I was going to join this elite group, so I had a little trouble with the guard getting in there. But
bet.
anyway, I did, and Admiral Clark met me and brushed the snow off me and combed my hair and got me ready to meet the people in it. But this is General Omar Bradley and Mark Clark and Van Fleet and all these 4- and 5-star guys, Secretary of Defense and an ambassador. So I got to meet them, but President, they all called him President. Wasn't in the room at the time. When he did, somebody said, "Gentlemen, the President," and we all came to attention. So he was brought over, introduced, and grabbed me by the arm, led me over to a big overstuffed leather chair, kind of pressed me into the chair, and then he sat on the arm of it and put his arm around me. I thought that was unusual. And then he said, before we get down to business, we ought to have a drink, don't you think? Of course, I said, yes, sir. He said, we have scotch and bourbon, water, and soda. My son John's the bartender. What do you have? I said, a bourbon and water, please. we have awfully good scotch, he says. And I said, well, sir, I prefer bourbon and water. Young man, we've got great scotch. I said, really? You know, I drink beer. He says, Lieutenant, we've got the world's finest scotch. And I said, Mr. President, I drink bourbon and water. Surprised a bunch of generals and admirals around there, but he says, okay, John, give him a bourbon and water.
What a great story.
Yeah,
Well, now we are on for the Congressional Medal of Honor, or the Medal of Honor, and I'm going to encourage all of those who are watching today to jump on this website. We want you to sign up. We want you to get involved in this effort to get this very deserving person the Medal of Honor. So thank you both for, again, joining us here on Operation American Dream. Thank you for your service to this great nation. Thank you for your service to this great nation. And you are our hero. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
We will be right back with more of Operation American Dream. Don't go away.
Much like in the military, nobody accomplishes the mission by themselves. I have support. I have a lot of support from men, from women, from the VA, friends, family. But it wasn't until I started opening my mouth and talking and admitting I had an issue, I had a problem, and seeking help. It wasn't easy. It's probably the toughest thing I've gone through. Probably tougher than going to boot camp.
Welcome back to Operation American Dream. As promised, we have Kalani back from Camis and Canines to talk about his story of homelessness here on the streets of San Diego. Kalani, welcome back.
Thank you.
Now, you served our nation in the Marines. Tell us about that.
So I joined the Marine Corps back in 2006, right after I finished school, right here in San Diego, University of San Diego.
Oh, wow.
2006, just really wanted to serve my country. It was really a lifelong dream as a child to be a Marine, just like my dad.
Yeah.
Served the Marine Corps for 10 years.
Wow.
During that time, I was a supply officer over at 2-6, 2nd Battalion, 6th Marines, and we deployed with the 2-6 MU. After that, I had the opportunity of coming here to San Diego and was at MCRD San Diego.
Okay.
Had the honor and privilege of working with some of the greatest Marines, some drill instructors, and had the opportunity to be part of the Marine making process. After that, I was then stationed over with 23rd Marines, where I was the assistant logistics officer, and had the opportunity to deploy with a small detachment. We went out to Jordan and trained the Jordanian Armed Forces.
Wow.
Yeah, so during that time, much like many other Marines out there, I experienced some hardships. I've already been divorced twice, and every single one of those experiences completely derailed my life. But just like the first experience, the second experience, there was some gold that came out of it. And this last one, you know, I lost my dogs, and I didn't realize how much those dogs meant to me until they were gone.
Right.
And I needed help at the time, and I didn't know what was going on. And I reached out to my command, and I asked them if I could get help, if I could take some time off and get myself better. And you know, the Marines were real good about taking care of each other. And so after raising my hand and I got some help from the VA, I decided that I needed to just spend some time by myself I didn't want to talk to anybody unless you were wearing the uniform with me, unless you knew the handshake, unless you were part of the gun club. I wasn't talking to you. Partly because I felt it was a waste of time.
So your whole mindset kind of shifted after losing everything, and now you're at rock bottom, living on the streets. What was that turning point for you? What happened to get you to now this award recipient or nominee for Best Business 12 months later? What was that turning point?
Well, after going from one 24-hour fitness to another just so that I could take a shower for the next day, I had joined a men's group called the Mankind Project, and that really was the starting of my turning point. So I continued to go to my group sessions, and MKP, Mankind Project, was a place where for the first time in my life, I was able to touch my feelings, face the skeletons in my closet, and be okay with it. I didn't have to run away from myself. And then it was during that time when a man, Dominic Mazzotti, part of MKP, finally stood up in circle and said, I can no longer allow this man, a Marine, to stay on the streets knowing that I've got an empty room in the house. So he brought me into his home, and he asked me a very simple question, which is, if you had all the resources, you could do anything you wanted to do, what would you do? And it was then that I realized I wanted to open up a doggy daycare because I had missed, and still do miss, my dogs. They absolutely were a big part of my life. I just didn't know it back then. And if they could truly touch me in that way, imagine what they could do for all the other veterans out there. So I wanted to do this doggy daycare, and I want to create a situation where vets have a place where they could call home, where they could come and be with all of their other brothers and sisters and reestablish that camaraderie, that esprit de corps, and participate in something that is much bigger than themselves. So when he asked me that question, I said I wanted to do a doggy daycare. And my first step was to create these dog products. And for the past year, we've been out on the streets just building up a brand name and getting ourselves known through the products that we have, collars, leashes.
And now you're being sold in the biggest pet store in San Diego.
That's right.
So we can find you there. We can find you online. We're going to run your website across the bottom of the screen so people know how they can buy these products and how they can support you in your crowdfunding, because I think what you've done is amazing. You have an incredible story. And we're running out of time now, but we definitely want to encourage our viewers to go online, go to his website, buy these products, check him out, and support all that he's doing. Camis and Canines with Kalani. You guys are amazing. Thank you for being a part of our show. We'll be right back with more of Operation American Dream. Don't go away. We've had a great show. Thanks for joining us for our best of. And if you've got questions about transition or financial literacy, home ownership, please go to operationamericandream.tv and send us your questions. We're here to help. If you want more information and you want to watch more episodes like this one with Captain Williams, we've got more heroes and more stories. Go to operationamericandream.tv. Until next week, have a great week, San Diego.